working in many forms, not only music, but also film, visual art, memoir, acting, and of course, theater, which is how we know David at Seattle Rep. We had the good fortune of collaborating with David on Here Lies Love back in 2017, his immersive disco musical about Imelda Marcos. It was truly truly unlike anything we've ever done before at the Rep. It was a massive artistic and critical and box office success for us. And of course, an adventure that we were extremely proud to present and be a part of. David, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you again. Yes, it's been a while.
Yeah, thanks for being with us. So I'm going to dive right in to our current political and social moment because it's so immediate and unprecedented. And I know how closely you follow these things. It seems like we're living in a time of revolution and also a time of national trauma. The global pandemic, the murder of George Floyd and other Black men and women at the hands of police, that points to centuries of violence and structural racism in our country, the long overdue task of tearing down these anti-Black systems that are so deeply rooted and trying to rebuild trust in institutions and trust in one another, the loss of so many jobs, and of course, also May was the hottest month on record. In times like this, it can seem like the arts, the theater, dance, and music, can seem so inconsequential. But they're also, part of how we heal and how we wrestle with the big forces at work. I just love to know, what's inspiring you right now in the midst of this time, and what role do you see the arts playing in this moment?
I was, let's see, there's some years ago, I became aware of a study that I think the University of Pennsylvania did about the effect of not just the arts, but kind of cultural institutions in various boroughs and neighborhoods in New York City. They ignored kind of the obvious ones. They ignored Lincoln Center and Museum of Modern Art and places like that. And they concentrated on the kind of less well-off boroughs, whether it was Bronx or far reaches of Queens or Brooklyn, Staten Island. And what they found was that cultural institutions, and that might not be a full-blown theater like Seattle Rep, but even small things like a little music venue, a public library, a little dance class place, all sorts of things that it could be a theater too, it could be a performance place as well. They had the effect of reducing crime in that neighborhood to a significant extent. Like I think it was about somewhere between 14 and 17%. They also reduced they reduced obesity in those neighborhoods, things you might not expect. Kids' grades went up. That's maybe not so surprising. And parental abuse went down. So these are the knock-on effects of cultural institutions are kind of wide-ranging and surprising. I kind of bring that up because it's not just, the cultural stuff is not just something you do because it's a feel-good thing, although many times it is a feel-good thing. But it also has this really incredible effect on how we live and how we see ourselves and how we relate to other people in our community and how we all think of one another. And those are the things that are in danger of being broken. And you can't just fix them by throwing money at it. There's a lot of other stuff, and a lot of it is cultural, that I think is going to make that kind of healings happen.
Mm-hmm. And what are some things that for you, what are you sort of wrestling with right now as an artist, and how are you looking at this? I mean, it's so hard for those of us who do live performance for a living. I know that, you know, you are not only love to perform, but you're out a lot at different clubs and venues and taking a lot of things in. What's it been like for you during this time to not have that as part of your life?
It's you. It's one of those things where you realize how much you miss it once it's gone. Um, I'm I'm a person who doesn't mind being alone. I often go out to eat, sit at a counter myself, and read a book. And I take pride in the fact that I can be alone like that. But at the same time, now that I have to be alone a lot of the time, I realize no, I really miss being around other people, even if I'm not doing anything with them. Just being around other people. Uh, that's what we are. And I thought like part of me has been kind of taken away. Part of my identity as a human being, not just as a person, but as a human being, is so that's kind of profound. But then eventually, I think little by little that'll come back. Um, yes, and
Yeah.
uh, I like you said, yes. Much of what I do is as a performer, and that has not been happening.
Yeah.
Um, and performances, the things that were scheduled for the next few months, upcoming months, have all been pushed back. As yeah, no
Yeah.
surprise there. When we it was sort of a big question mark hanging up, like when is that going to be okay?
Yeah.
Um, I don't think any of us really know. I mean, we all hope that there's a vaccine, something like that. That'll make a big change. People will feel a lot safer being around each other. Um, I here's funny how things happen. Uh, I worked with a choreographer, a guy named Stephen Hoggett. Um,
Yeah. He's
on
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, he's amazing. I worked with him on another piece with Alex Timbers, and Stephen got reached out to me. Might have been about a month ago, and he said, uh, "My friend Christine and I are trying to figure out how to do a kind of socially distant dance event, and we're thinking of maybe we could do it at the Armory here. The Armory is just a huge, massive, big room. So we've been discussing how to do that. It would be obviously it's not a performance, really. It's more kind of led communal dance. We're inviting the public to come in, and we lead them in some kind of dance stuff. And we're not sure exactly how we're going to do it. Obviously, it'll all be spaced out. Everybody will have little areas where they stand, um, and getting people in and out is going to be a thing. Um, I think those things might be surmountable, but then then we have to think of the creative end. That's the creative part is more what we're wrestling with now. How do we do this, and how do we find an arc? How do we find a shape in something like this? Um,
Hmm.
the but I'm excited that something like that can be the beginning of people getting used to the idea of yes, we can kind of be together again. Not exactly the way we were before, but we can take a step in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting what you're saying, and something I've been thinking about too, about not only how do we come back and make sure that we're protecting the health and safety of our patrons and our artists, but how do we actually adjust how we're making the work to sort of, in a way, take advantage of what this moment has to offer creatively, that there's actually perhaps even new modes of expression, new choreography, new ways of performing that we never would have discovered without this happening. And what are those? I think that's going to be where the innovation is. And it's interesting to hear you talking about doing exactly that. Sounds like.
Yeah, we don't know how everything will work, but it's it's I guess yes, it feels really good to be actually thinking about making some work.
Yeah.
Because a lot, as we all know, yeah, at this time it's a time where a lot of people are just going, I can't do anything.
Right.
What I
Exactly.
do has been taken away from me. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I want to ask you about some of your other recent artistic projects that you've been working on um, uh, over the last couple of years since we've seen each other for Here Lies Love. Uh, a major one is American Utopia, and you've made a lot of solo albums since your Talking Heads days, and you've had a lot of exciting collaborations with other artists. And American Utopia, though, was the first album that you'd released, I think, in almost a dozen years or so as a solo artist. I'm just kind of curious, how did that album come about?
Um, the answer is pretty easy. My I was visiting London for some reason. Oh, about the Theater of the Mind project, actually.
Mm,
And I went over to visit my friend Brian Eno, who I've worked with many, many times. And he played me a couple of drum program tracks that he'd done. And I thought they sounded great. They sounded really energetic, almost like a live drummer, although sonically they didn't sound like a live drummer. But the kind of energy and sense of improvisation and kind of that they weren't uh, a repetitive loop that you could hear, that felt uncannily human. And I said, "These are great. What are you going to do with them?" He didn't know what he was going to do with them. I said, "Can you want to give me a couple of these and see if I can do right over them?" And I did. Uh, I began to write over those. And long story short, uh, not all of the original drum tracks that Brian gave me survived all the way to the end, but they were the original thing that kind of kickstarted me starting writing a whole group of songs. And from that led to me imagining what would it be like to perform these. What would is there an have I done some things in recent years that now I can think, oh, can I bring that bring a new approach to kind of a music concert? What could that be? Um, and it turned out that I I realized that with recent technology and with I of course asked, what's what's the budget? What do I
right. You got to
as
know
one
what the
does?
container is. Yeah.
Yes, what are my constraints? Do
Yeah.
I how many musicians can I have before I break the budget? I don't want to lose money. I'm not trying to rake in a lot, but I don't want to lose anything.
Right.
Um, and I found out that, well, at that particular moment, I could afford a bunch of a lot of musicians, which I realized I would need to realize what I had in mind, which was to have everybody be mobile. That every musician, the drums would be split up amongst six players. Um, Everybody would be in motion almost all the time, and which meant that the stage could be completely empty. Um, so for the choreographer that I worked with, Annie B. Parsons, who also worked on Here Lies Love,
Yeah.
um, that was I thought this has got to be pretty ideal for her. It's there's nothing on stage that gets in the way of any kind of movement. It's all about the movement and the music we're doing. Um, and so I kind of it took about a year to figure out technically how to do that. Um, how to have no wires, no cables, everything be hidden. Um, the lighting would all be hidden. You wouldn't see any of that stuff either, but it would somehow follow us. Um, but once that was solved, and once it kind of kicked in, it was pretty ecstatic.
What
Um,
it was. I just have to I have to say that because I saw it when it came to Seattle, the Paramount, and the just the elegance and the simplicity. It looks so simple when you look at it. Like you know how when you describe it just now how complicated it is to actually make that happen. But it's just the simple elements that are on display and the aesthetic unity of it, of the set and the costumes and the movement and having what happened for me in the audience was that all the people and all their beautiful variety kind of just take center stage, and you really just focus on the humanity of what you're trying to uh, create together, and all of the different voices, not only yours but all those, you put forward all those performers and their unique qualities. And that was when I watched it, I was like, oh, that's American Utopia. Like that's the America I want to see in a lot of ways. It was really striking.
well, yeah, you kind of summed it all up right there. Um, and a lot of those things, like what you just said, I didn't. That was not part of the original intention.
Mm.
I wish I could say that it was. That I was trying to uh, figure out a way to make those things evident. Um, but I wasn't. Those things were maybe unconscious, but a lot of it was just kind of solving these technical problems and trying something new. And then, but I did realize that yeah, to be honest, I did realize that by removing everything from the stage and just leaving it so that it's just us, just the performers, um, it it kind of strips us naked as if this is us. We're just like you. We don't have, there's no big things up here. There's no big screens up here. It's just us. And what we're doing, we're holding our instruments and playing them. And uh, I think that audiences found that very relatable and very moving in a way. There's a kind of human connection.
Yeah,
And there was
very,
not,
very moving. Was it your idea for everybody to be barefoot? Because that added this element of vulnerability that, or
yeah,
was that just sort of another practical thing of accomplishing the dance? It just
it
made sense to be barefoot.
was, I wanted everybody to be dressed the same in some sort of fairly kind of nondescript, but in sort of attractive way. I didn't want kind of wild, crazy costumes. I wanted something that looked kind of elegant. So again, the attention went to us as opposed to what crazy outfits we were wearing. So I thought, oh, well, okay, all going to wear suits. Women and men, we're all going to wear suits and they'd be tailored and look as nice as we possibly can. But then I thought, we're not going to wear business shoes. That's
Right.
we're not going to do that. We have to offset the kind of formality of the suit. So I thought, oh, well, let's go barefoot, which in most venues, like at the Paramount, it was certainly fine. But we played some outdoor places and various some places where it was not everybody wanted to go out in their bare feet.
Yeah, like right. I can imagine. Um, well, I also remember when I heard that you were moving the show to Broadway. I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense because even though what I saw was a concert, the unity of it and also just the storytelling elements of it, the way that you put together, it felt like there were the beginnings. There was already a narrative in there, and I'm curious, again, when you sort of set out with this concept, did you have a Broadway show in mind, or did that come later too?
The idea of doing it as a Broadway show came later too.
Mhm.
Um, Pretty early on, I got wind that some Broadway people had come to see the show and said, this needs to come to Broadway. So maybe that planted a seed, but we were already on the road at
Mhm.
that point. Um, as you said, I became aware that the show has a kind of narrative arc, and it's in the concert version, it's pretty subtle. But I thought, okay, for Broadway, you have to make that a little clearer without kind of saying it too much in your face. But we have to make the fact that there's a beginning and a middle and an end a little bit clearer to an audience. And I think it might be something that's needed when you're in that environment, that a Broadway theater with the nice comfy seats and it's more intimate. People come into those kind of spaces with a different expectation. I'm going to guess that people at the Paramount were probably up and dancing by maybe like the third or fourth song.
Yeah.
And but I had a very good hunch that was not going to happen on Broadway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I thought we have to take advantage of that. We have to kind of own the fact that the audiences come with a different expectation, and use that as an opportunity. So there's a little bit more of an opportunity for storytelling, to kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together little by little and let them know this is what's happening. Now this is what's happening, which again, I wasn't sure that was going to work, but it did. It was, I mean, I'd gotten very used to people being up and dancing by the third or fourth song, and we as a band really enjoyed that. It really was ecstatic. But I thought, okay, this is going to be a very different thing. Mm-hmm. They'll be dancing by the end, but we have to take them on a journey and kind of bring in other things. And it gave me a chance to talk to the audience a little bit more than I did. And with a little bit of coaching from Alex Timbers, I kind of structured the talk so that actually you could tell that it was going to go somewhere, that it was leading somewhere. It wasn't just random song introductions or, "Hey, New York, how are you doing?"
Right.
And this is not my natural thing to do kind of talks, but I got it eventually. I realized that I could kind of loosely follow a script, and that worked pretty well. A lot of once we were on Broadway, a lot of comedians started coming to see us. I don't know if you heard about this. No. No. This is, I mean, one or two. Okay, that's really great, and it's really great if somebody whose work you like or is excited to see comes to see you in a show. That's kind of exciting. But more and more comedians just kept coming. I never really figured it out, but I also realized that I was learning on stage how to deliver a line, where to put the emphasis, if there was an audience reaction and a pause or something like that, to how to kind of follow up on that. All those little details that they have learned in comedy clubs.
Yeah.
I was having to learn it really quickly on stage, enjoying it very much. But I thought, this is a totally new world for me. One night, the actress and comedian Amy Schumer brought Jerry Seinfeld to the show, which, I mean, we were all just like, what? And we met and had a little talk afterwards and some beers. And Jerry Seinfeld said, there's a line that you're delivering at the end that you're doing it wrong. And I don't know if I was kind of aware that he's a kind of what would you call it? Kind of a mechanic of humor.
Yeah, he's like
He-
a humor mechanic. Yeah, like
yeah, yeah. He
a joke
really knows,
mechanic.
like, yes, he knows, like, this word has to be land here, and then
Right.
you put a pause here, and then you do this, and boom, and you got him.
Totally.
And
He's so good at that. Yeah.
yeah, he's so good at that. So he said, yes, that one line, you, the funny word, the funny part you say is in the middle of the sentence. And then when you complete the sentence, you've killed your own laugh. You've jumped on your own joke. You got to just flip that so that the funny part is the end of the sentence, and then they can laugh. He
Yeah.
was right. I
So you
changed
tried
it.
it and it worked.
I changed it. It worked every night.
Yeah. It's one of the most satisfying moments when you're adjusting a show, when you figure out how to get the laugh in a way that feels authentic and not like you're, not like you're goofing on yourself, but feels like it's still authentic, but it lands in the right way. That's such a
Yeah,
great
it
kind of,
never felt cheap. It never
yeah,
felt like, oh, I'm just manipulating the
yeah,
audience. And I always felt that I was very present, that
right.
I was really listening to them. A Broadway house is much smaller than, say, the Paramount. You can kind of see everybody, and they know that you can see them. And it's not like there's a lot of yelling out in a Broadway house, but they know there is a kind of a relationship that goes on, and I loved that. Uh, I I felt like I was making little adjustments every night to how that night's audience felt and how they were reacting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how it can work over a long run too, right? Is that you just deepen the show that way because of the quality of listening and what you learn from an audience every night. And I love how you're talking about the evolution of this show and how it's like there was a source of inspiration, but then you keep making these discoveries along the way. And I I often find this, like, for people who, when people want to know about artistic process, it's like we're always sort of feeling our way in the dark, trying to make discoveries and adjust things as we go. And how this show has evolved is a really kind of fascinating example of that. And now I've heard that, I think I read on your website, by the way, everybody, you should go to David Byrne's website because it's a really fun website. There's tons of information about his work and all the things that he's connected to. But
Thank you.
On your website, the show's supposed to come back, if we can come back, right? There's going to be a return engagement.
Yeah, we're hoping maybe March at the earliest, maybe.
Right.
But who knows? But yeah.
And then I read that Spike Lee is going to film it and make a
He
film.
already filmed it.
did.
It's in the can.
Oh, okay.
We got that in under the wire. I think within a couple of days they're going to announce when that comes out.
And is it changed again with the film version? It's a capture of the Broadway show, but are there new elements that you've added for the film?
There's a few little elements. Not major. I had a lot of talks with Spike, and he says, "No, it works.
Mm-hmm.
We're not gonna mess with it."
Yeah.
And there was a few little things that were added. I don't want to reveal what they all are.
Yeah, that's okay. I was just.
They're pretty minor. I think when I've watched it, of course, it was watching it on the film was the first time I'd ever seen the show, and which is a little weird to say, but it's true. I can never see the show. So this was the first time I actually got to see it. And so I was quite moved, but I also, because of what film and video can do, the audience for that is seeing it in a kind of from different angles in a way that a stage audience can't do. When you're in a theater, you're looking at it from wherever your seat is, and that's it. And I'm not saying it's better. It's just, it's different when suddenly you're up on stage with the musicians and you kind of feel what they're feeling. And then you're back out with the audience, and then you're overhead seeing what kind of shapes we're making. It's, I mean, that's the kind of thing that a film can do.
Yeah. Unless you're doing something like Here Lies Love, where you're immersed in all of it and you can see it from all those different angles as an audience member too.
I can't imagine how anyone could ever capture that.
Yeah. I mean, I think space is such an interesting part of how we experience performance, and you've shown that over and over again in the variety of different spaces and ways you've worked. And something I'm always thinking about programming for the theater. We have 2 spaces, and I'm always thinking about what are the advantages of a play of being in one space over the other, and what are the obstacles for a certain play or production being in a certain space. Like, how do you sort of set that, how do you match the form with the content? And with Here Lies Love, it was something so unique in that we actually contorted a proscenium stage into this giant disco as you'd envisioned. And a lot of people, that piece had so much success in New York and London before we brought it to Seattle. But some people thought that we had done a tour, and they didn't really know that was another stage in the evolution of that piece, where we created that space within the proscenium, and it ended up being, I think, about 3 times as large as any other space that the show had performed in. It was such a massive thing. And I remember one of the thrilling parts about it was when audience members would come into the space, especially people who'd been and seen shows in that venue many times, and they were completely disoriented by entering the venue and thrilled just coming in, and then they got to experience the amazing show. And just speaking of you sort of watching your own work, during the preview process, I remember how you were there. Of course, you were there every night because you and your collaborators, Alex and Annie and the others, were fine-tuning the show before it opened. I think we had 10 previews or something. And you were often there on the dance floor in the crowd. And I remember hearing a story from somebody saying they brought their friend, and you were like standing next to them. And the friend said, "That guy looks exactly like David Byrne." Which, but you were there every night experiencing it. Can you talk a little bit about, I want to get back to your current work, but can you talk a little bit about what your experience was like in Seattle with Here Lies Love?
Well, going back to those previews, because of the nature of the show, because it's so immersive like that, and it's about how the audience feels and how they're relating to the actors and how they're relating to the space. Does the audience feel too cramped? Are they kind of feeling timid, or are they relaxed about it? And in order to kind of assess that, you kind of have to be in there with them. You can't like sneak up way up into some kind of up in the gods and look down and get what it's about. You have to be down in there with people to see what it feels like and what they might be feeling, which is kind of, it's a lot of fun. I was, as you said, I was just amazed at the transformation of the theater. That I remember occasionally taking friends or people who would come and visit and go, let me take you around the back and show you where the actual theater is. Look down there. There's the proscenium. And people were they could not wrap their heads around it.
Yeah. And what's amazing now is that we'll never be able to look at that space the same way. it will always, it's like forever changed for us because we also know what else it can be. And I think that just opens up a whole other world of possibility. The other thing that when you were here, and this is kind of going to your book, Bicycle Diaries, which I think it's actually underneath my computer. It's one of my props right now, holding my computer up. But I remember in that book you talk about discovering different cities on a bicycle and the sort of pace of that, and how you discover the character of a city on your bike, and which I love because I ride bikes too. I ride a bike too, but I remember when you were in Seattle, and I don't know if you were riding your bike, but you were everywhere. There was like there was 4 of you. You were up on Capitol Hill going to town hall to see lectures, and you were down at the Brain Institute, and you were doing a radio show at KEXP, and attending galleries and that kind of thing. Were you riding your bike while you were here? I can't remember. And did you discover anything about Seattle?
I don't think it was one that it was a rental bike or a borrowed bike or something like that. Yeah. And I mean, that's just how I get around. And with Seattle, sometimes you have to bring some rain gear.
Yeah.
But it's not. Yeah, a little bit of rain gear, and you're kind of all you're okay.
Be prepared for hills.
Yeah, be prepared for hills and rain.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Yeah.
That's been one of a big relief during the pandemic. The band and I, and sometimes other friends, we would get together and go for bike rides. Sometimes pretty long ones, but sometimes not that long. Spike Lee I've gone on rides with him a couple of times. And we can be socially, we can be distant. And yet you're kind of just being out of doors and actually being somewhat close to some friends. It was good for the mental health.
Yeah.
And then was it like a couple of days ago, there was a protest march on bikes. Hundreds, they've probably done this in Seattle too. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. One of the band members got in touch with me and said, "This is going to happen. You should come out." And it was amazing.
That's great. Well, we're getting close to our time, and I still have a lot of questions to ask, but I definitely wanted to talk to you about Theater of the Mind, this other project that you're working on that was supposed to be at the Denver Center this year. Can you tell us a little bit more about what Theater of the Mind is?
It's a project I've been working on for a while. We've done a few workshops. We did one like small version in Menlo Park in Silicon Valley. And it's basically taking some kind of perceptual experiments and experiences that various neuroscience labs have done. Some of them are new and some of them not so new. And connecting those in an experiential theater production where an audience goes through a series of rooms led by a guide. They can't wander around on their own. This is not some kind of guide yourself. And the guide tells a story. It's the story of the guide's life. And in the course of doing that, the audience realizes, and the guide too, that a lot of the things that are seen and heard are not real, or they're not what you think you see is not what's really happening, or what you hear is different than what the person next to you hears. We also play with people's identity. We give them all new names and mess around with that. So the sense is that I'm hoping that people walk away from it having a sense that their perceptions are not fixed and their identity is not fixed either. That who we are is always changing. And how we perceive the world is always changing, is continually changing, which to some people could be a kind of upsetting idea. But I'm hoping that we can kind of spin it that no, this is a good idea. It means we're not stuck. That we can, whatever crazy situations we find ourselves in, like right now, means that we might be able to find a way out of it, both the kind of political and social situations and the pandemic.
Yeah, it's like a very mindful sort of way of being where you're just very present to all of the different influences that are working on us all the time. And it seems to be a thread that runs through your work, like how we're not these fixed beings, that we are changeable and very influenced by all the different forces, both external and internal, that are playing out within us all the time. How did you
Exactly.
just
And some,
go ahead?
oh, and some of that can be terrible.
Right.
I mean, there's the possibility that we get seduced by something horrible, but one hopes that more often it goes the other way.
Yeah. Um, we talked about
While
this. Go
I
ahead.
think while I was in Seattle, well, yeah, one of the things I did was I looked for locations for that show. And,
Oh, you did?
uh, yes, um, there's, I think it's the second floor of the train station.
Oh, yeah. That's a great
Uh,
space.
it's a really nice space.
It really,
It's
yeah.
it was being used for some provisional temporary show or something, and I thought there's some good spaces here. Yeah.
In in Bicycle Diaries, you talk about how every city has a kind of personality that's built in from in its DNA, that's kind of related to its founding, and which is something that I've often thought about too. Do you? How would you describe the personality of Seattle from your experience here?
I don't think it's changing a lot, right? It's
Yeah.
changing a lot. I mean, it was years ago, it would have, you might have said, oh, it's a town about people read a lot there. Um, there's, they're kind of open-minded. There's this and that. And now it's kind of thought of as this big tech hub,
Yeah.
uh, which emerged, whatever, in the last 10 years or so, which is, I mean, it's a huge change. I mean, the character of the city has changed.
Yeah, it's going through a real uh, identity crisis in some ways. But there's a lot of interesting innovation that's happening here, and it'll be like, it feels like a city in its adolescence, where it's still kind of growing into what it can become. Um, Part of that is just because it's still such a young city. But I'm always curious to hear the outsider's point of view, the visitor's point of view.
What, from what I read here in New York, Seattle and Washington in general did a pretty good job of responding to the virus some months ago when it first started hitting. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
Better than a lot of other places.
yeah. I think overall we've done well, and our governor's done well, and our county, Dow Constantine, the response was decisive and swift. And of course, since we were on the leading edge, like New York, um, we had to act quickly, and it was. Now we're in, I don't know, week 9 or something like that, and still don't really know when we're going to get into the next phase of things. But yeah, it's overall, it's been good. And I think the nature, Seattle being a kind of introverted city where people don't mind staying home in some ways, I think has maybe helped. Of course, there are a lot of people that are being negatively impacted, and not everybody can work from home. So there's a lot of repercussions that we're going to have to figure out. But overall, health wise, it's been pretty smooth. Um, well, we're just about out of time, David. And before we go, I do have a couple of plugs I need to make. One is
Okay.
um, oh, sorry, I'm just getting text messages. um, uh, One is for Fernando Sancho's book, who was the photographer for us here in Seattle on Here Lies Love. His book of photographs is coming out in the next couple of months, or actually
Wow.
sooner than that, maybe next week or something like that. And
This
his
guy
book
followed
is called,
the whole process. Yeah.
yeah, his book is called Here Lies Love, a pop-up building. And you can order it on bookshop.org. We're going to put the information in the chat so people can find it. But it's a beautiful set of photographs, and I know that you have an introduction in there, and I think I wrote something for it, Alex. So encourage people to check that out. I wish I had a copy here that I could show you all. And I just again want to thank everybody out there in cyberspace who's tuning in for our conversation tonight. Both on stage and off, your support really makes this work possible. So if you are able, we invite you to consider making a gift to Seattle Rep today so that we can continue to connect to our community, to collaborate with an extraordinary group of diverse artists like Mr. Byrne here, and to continue to strive to put theater at the heart of public life. That's what we're about. And again, David, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. It's been such a pleasure to speak with you about your work.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
Look forward to seeing what comes next with the projects that you're working on.